Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Analytics in Action, Association Analytics How-To Webinar Series. Today, we are talking a lot about pie, and you can see that some of us have pie behind us. Wait, I can't, other way. There you go.
I'm making pie today.
While we're waiting for everyone to get on about a minute or so, would love to have everyone tell us in the chat what your favorite pie is. So mine is behind me. It's a Dutch apple pie a la mode. Gotta have the ice cream on it. Greg, what is your favorite?
My favorite pie is pumpkin pie, and I love pumpkin pie so much that for my birthday in August, I oftentimes don't want a cake, I want a pumpkin pie.
That makes sense. Bill, yours is also pumpkin?
Of course.
So you're making that face, but to me, that's my least favorite pie, actually.
Oh, it's amazing. It's the best with whipped cream on top of it. It's like, that's what you want.
It's my dad's favorite, just not mine.
Yeah.
See,
So-
the chat agrees with me. Uh-oh.
Lauren agrees with me, see.
Mm-hmm.
So fun fact, I got married on Pie Day, 3/14/15, and we definitely had pie instead of cake, which I prefer pie over cake, I will say that.
That's very surprising that the pie pun didn't occur to me during the whole process of talking about pies, but thank you for bringing that up.
We got a key line with Dave.
Oh yeah, I know Dave's is
Dutch
cute.
apple pie. We were talking about summer pies versus fall pies.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize there were that many summer pies, but there are a ton.
Oh, blueberry cherry, yeah. Dutch apple.
We've got
Yes,
tons
yeah.
of attendees. I'm excited. Everybody's on time today too.
Yeah. Let's see, how many we have people? I think we can probably get started. All right, well, thanks again for joining us. I'm Katrina McPhee. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager here at Association Analytics. So today we are talking about pie, but the piece of your budget pie that you want to slice off for analytics. So your hosts today, like usual in our series, are Bill and Greg. So Bill's our SVP of Strategy and Solution. He helps out with sales here at A2 and also works with clients on data strategy, engagement, and governance, among many other things. He's been in the software and product services business for more than 20 years. And then we have Greg here, who's our VP of Sales. He leads the sales teams and helps spread our love of data and what we offer to the association community. And he's worked for and with associations for over 15 years. So we fondly call these two for this series, the Greg and Bill Show. But today, we're going to have a special guest who's going to join us at the end of the series, Rebecca Achurch from Achurch Consulting. So she's going to walk us through how she talks to her clients about the budgeting process, choosing the right tool, and convincing leadership that it's worth it to make that investment. So we're excited to have her here as well. I think I'm turning it over to Bill, correct, to get us started?
Correct, and let's get it straight. It's the Bill and Greg show.
Oh,
not the
sorry.
not the Greg and Bill show. All right. So here's our agenda. We're going to do, as usual, a couple of polls and some introductory materials. Then we're going to talk about, and this is a webinar about getting budget for analytics. So we're going to talk about why, in some cases, analytics might not be yet budgeted, right? So you have other priorities, change is hard, return on investment, right? We have to calculate or estimate that ROI in order to get this through. So we're going to talk about how you can do that. We're going to wrap things up with our special guest star, that's Rebecca, and she's going to come in and talk to us about tool selection and decision-making processes in general. And we'll tie that back into to analytics a bit as well. Q&A will be officially at the end, but as usual, we encourage everybody to jump in with any questions or comments throughout. And, you know, we have some things planned, but to some degree, we can take the conversation in the direction that you would like to go. So with that, I'm going to let Greg introduce A2.
Love it. And the Bill and Greg show has been on hiatus for a while. I've been doing webinars without you, and it's just not the same. I got to say, not the same.
Likewise.
So why are we talking about budgeting for analytics today? Well, I think that makes sense. We're an analytics company. We are Association Analytics. So if you're not familiar with us, we have a software and solutions that help you better love your data. Everything from data quality to data cleanup, helping organize and arrange all of your data in a data warehouse. helping you leverage your data to make better informed decisions, right? Getting insights out of the data you have. That's what we are all about. And today we're talking about how do you really justify, how do you get the budget ready for analytics?
Okay, so like usual, we're going to start with a poll question. And the reason that we want to do any of these things, right, is to address some of the challenges that we face. So let's kind of start there high level. What are the biggest challenges facing your association today? All right, so for the benefit of the recording, we've got some choices here: staying relevant, declining membership, declining event or non-dues revenue. We lack resources or staff. We don't have adequate performance measurement or performance management in place. We have outdated systems and processes, or lack of strategy. So check all that to apply, but appreciate if you limit it to your top 3 choices.
I'm really excited to see the answer here. I suspect I know what some of the answers are going to be just from all my conversations I have, but I'm excited to see what our attendees today say their answers are.
I'm excited because we got to participate. Usually the panelists don't get to answer. And if anybody has one that was not included on that list, I would invite you to add it into the chat. Okay, so
Got it.
lack of resources is the #1 answer. At 42% of us chose that as one of our biggest challenges. Yeah, but I have to say that every single item on the list had more than 25%. So that really tells me that most of us wanted to select all of the above, but because we were forced to choose 3, we went with our best guesses, our estimates, and lack of resources and staff is kind of a catch-all that sort of encompasses some of those other things. So not surprising that that one would kind of edge out the others. Any big shocks there, Greg?
I think lack of resources and staff was going to be my pick for #1. I'm a little surprised performance measurement was #2. I was thinking it would be something about declining event participation or non-dues revenue. We're in a budget meeting after all, right? If we make money, we can spend money. But interestingly enough, performance measurement and management. Good answers.
Okay. Again, if anybody has a primary challenge that you didn't see on the list, love to hear about that in the chat. Okay, so now as a segue, we know that we lack resources and we lack staff, and we're also concerned with our performance measurement. So that's a great segue to our next poll question, which is, how is your association's performance in addressing these challenges? Is it excellent? Is it very good? Just good? Is it fair, or is it poor?
I think this goes into one of the tips I gave at our conference last week was report on operational objectives, not tactical things, right? Strategic goals, long-term goals. And if one of your long-term goals is, hey, we don't have enough staff to do the job, how much time and effort are we putting in every day to find and acquire new staff, or to upskill our existing staff? Or do we get lost in the minutia of the day and never get to work on the big things that are important to us?
All right, I'm pretty excited to see the results of this. Let's check it out. All right, so majority of us, 52%, said we're doing a fair job. 35% said good, 9% said very good. Nobody said excellent. All right, so we all got some room for improvement on here. That's good. A couple of us said poor, so sorry to hear that, but hopefully there'll be something in this for you today. So I think the message here is that we have these big challenges. Most of us are kind of aware of some of the solutions that are available, but nevertheless, we're not doing a great job of making progress on this, despite the availability of tools, of information, and other things. There can be lots of reasons for that, which are the subject of other webinars. But today we're going to talk about how do you kind of get your piece of the pie, right? What's that one important thing that you're interested in, and hopefully it's analytics. But if it's not, you can use some of these techniques for other things as well. Okay, right. So we talked about our challenges, and what about our solutions, Greg?
Awesome. So no matter what challenges you have or you're thinking about, I sort of put our solutions into 4 different buckets here. We can change the people or the organizations that are helping us solve those challenges. Do we need more people? Do we need different people? Maybe it's not people that we need to hire. Maybe it's external people we need to engage. Maybe there's a consultant or a third-party organization that can help us solve something. Not everything that's a challenge we need to solve. It needs to be solved, but maybe we could hire somebody else to solve that for us. Specifically, if it's a time-sensitive challenge, right? We need to solve this challenge for 6 months and then it'll go away. That would be a great opportunity to engage a consultant to help with that. We can always redefine or change our strategic alignment. So what is our goal? How do we align our departments towards that goal? Should we move the goalpost, or should we realign our departments and how they're reaching towards that goal, right? I think this is a good one. We just have to execute better, right? We need to upgrade our marketing system. We can send better emails and increase our open rate by 3%. That'll get 3% more people to come to our conference. That will improve our outcomes we're looking for with attendance and revenue. And I think this one is challenging because we're not going to squeeze more juice out of the orange, maybe a little bit, but we're going to get incremental betterness, right? Most of the good stuff we've already gotten out. It's hard to just work harder. That's not really an easy statement to say, oh, just work harder and it'll be fine. I think this last one is a big one here, is systems and processes. This is often one that involves change. Change is hard. We'll talk more about that. But changing our systems out that don't support our needs, or changing our process that doesn't reach the goals we're looking for. Maybe not just changing our systems, but adding new systems to the mix, right? What tools and technology can help us achieve our goals? If most associations are in the same boat you are, right? It's hard to find, hire, and attract and retain the best possible staff. I can't get more out of my staff by making them work harder. What if I can leverage technology to help me overcome these challenges? What if I can get tools that reduce some of the manual things our staff members do? Somebody talked about keeping your cooks in the kitchen, right? We don't want our cooks prepping the food and getting everything ready. We want our cooks in the kitchen, cooking the food, doing what they're experts at. And I think aligning our technology to our goals, allowing our staff members to be, specialists in what they do and really focusing on that, and eliminating some of that non-technical stuff they do, things the computers can take, can be a huge uplift for us.
All right, awesome. So look, I want to ask everyone that's listening to think of anything else, right? What else? What other solutions have you implemented, or should you implement in your association that maybe are something that Greg didn't mention? Or if you have one that doesn't really fall naturally into one of these buckets, I'd be curious to hear about that. I want to ask while you're thinking about that, Greg, I wonder if you could share. So we recently, not that recently now, but we bought this tool called Sales Loft. And right, so I think that's, as you were talking about, like you can only sort of get so much juice out of the orange, right? You can only people can only work so hard, and at a certain point we added this tool to kind of help people work more efficiently. So without giving away all of all the secrets for how things are done, what can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. The challenge was a lot of my team were doing manual tasks in a disorganized way. They weren't following best practices. Different team members were doing things differently. Some team members were spending a lot of time on small tasks that didn't move the needle forward for them. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to get a tool that helped align best practices. And there's what are called sales enablement tools that help make sure that your team members can be more effective and efficient and can follow templates and standards. So instead of everybody sort of being in the Wild West and figuring out how to run a cadence themselves, we said, look, here's some really good cadences that we can just all adopt and use. And then we can benchmark and we can look at metrics on those. Instead of everybody saying, I'll organize my day how I want, the tool helps you organize your day for you. And literally when you're ready for the next task, you just click on next task and it says, oh, here's the next thing you're ready to do. Here's the next thing you're ready to do. So that was a solution that helped us optimize our team members' time and effort, right? It's hard to go find the next expert person who can sell software, analytics software to associations. There's not a ton of people out there that are ready to do that, but it was easier for me to optimize the time of my team members I already had.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks, Greg. So, right. I mean, so the main message here, right, is that we maybe could have incrementally improved, 1 or 2% more efficient or something like that across the team, but getting a right tool to automate things, maybe, I don't know, it's 15, 20%, right? So it's a really noticeable sort of game-changing amount of improvement. Okay, so this being a webinar about budgeting, and in kind of like spoiler alert, right? I mean, one of the main solutions that we're going to be talking about, and that we always talk about, is analytics. So why is analytics not in your budget, right? And so some of you might think, well, it is in our budget, or we're already customers, we already have a solution. And if that's the case, I'm going to ask you to share some of your experiences as we go through, and talk about some of the strategies that we can use for the rest of us to get it in our budget. But we have a lot of these conversations, and most often it boils down to a couple of things, right? So we have other priorities. We're going to be spending our money elsewhere, or our time and our resources, right? It may not even be money. Maybe like, look, we have a small staff and we have to really concentrate on implementing this new AMS or something like that, right? Generally speaking, change is hard, right? So we have to get that buy-in, and there's a lot of momentum that you have to overcome. And probably the third thing that we hear a lot is, well, what's the ROI? It's hard for me to prove the ROI, and so therefore we can't justify spending this money. So Greg, what anything else that you can think of that's a common reason why analytics or really anything that's gets passed over in a budgeting process?
I think one thing that a lot of associations are talking to me about now is economic uncertainty. We're not sure what's going to happen in the future. Projecting revenue has been really tough, right?
Yeah.
We made a lot of money from our events. We didn't have events for a couple of years. Event predictions are very tough for us now. We're just not sure where we're going to end up. So we're sort of in this holding pattern. And from my perspective, you're either on the way up or you're on the way down. So in a holding pattern basically means we're going to be on the way down. We're not investing in the future technology. If you look at what really smart businesses do during economic downturns, they use that as a chance to invest, as an opportunity to get ahead of the competition and come out even stronger. But I hear that a lot is economic uncertainty. We're putting the brakes on everything, right? We're not spending any new money because the board just doesn't know.
Great. Yeah, that's a great one. So that one, for those of you that have been on our other webinars, you would know that's what we call contextual data, right? That economic uncertainty, whether it's from COVID or just like the macroeconomic climate in general, those are contextual factors that might affect your sales data, your events data, really, or your decisions in general. Okay, so we're going to dive into these three, and if there's time, we can talk about some others as well. But first of all, we'll talk about other priorities, right? So we have a lot of other things that we could be spending our money on, and we could be targeting our resources toward. But the idea is that there are a lot of solutions to all of those.
I'm sorry, Bill, can we go back one slide? Is that okay? I have an impromptu survey. We haven't had a lot of chat. I'll make this easy for you. I'm just looking for a number, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever. How many big priorities does your association invest in a year? If you're going to look at your budget and your calendar year, are you doing one big thing? Are you doing 5 big things? Is it 20 big things you're doing? What is the appetite for investment and change in your association? Just drop a number in the chat for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What would I consider big? Well, what do you consider big? You're spending money on it. You're spending time and effort on it. It's going to take more than a week or 2 to implement. I would say that's big.
1 to 3. Okay, 3 is popular. 1 to 15.
15.
10. Okay.
Wow. Okay. All right. Thanks for sharing. I really wanted to know, because oftentimes I hear, well, we have this other priority. It's like, well, how many priorities are there? If you can handle 15 big projects throughout the year, that's one question. But if you're doing 1 to 2 big projects throughout the year, pretty different type of organization. I imagine staffing sizes and annual revenue would impact those. How many project teams can you really spin up? Thanks for sharing.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting though. So some of these things are about like how to like really prepare and how to like make analytics that one or one of those top 2 things that get implemented or that get funded in a given year. But some of the things that we'll talk about at the end are like the budget's already set. Like, how do we like sort of wedge our way into an existing budget, right? Get some unbudgeted expenditures, things like that. So that's almost similar type situation to an organization that's going to fund 10 or 15 things, right? It's a different type of conversation. So yeah, that's great. Thanks. Good question, Greg. Okay, right. So we have a lot of solutions to all those different things, right? The marketing department wants a new website. All right, they want that new marketing automation system. The membership team wants better reports. IT, wants some new server technology or security. Maybe they just want a new AMS altogether. They're fed up with the one that you have. you know, all the departments want to hire more people, right? We talked about that, you know, that lack of resources. And so one of the things that's interesting about analytics is it's kind of, there's a little something for everyone, right? So how can we get everyone a win? Analytics, one of the great values of analytics is it kind of makes all those other systems a little bit stickier, right? Increases the value of all those other source systems, right? Your email system, your AMS, your website, you know, in some cases, your community, all those different source systems can really be enhanced with the use of analytics.
I also think a big way to understand investments and upgrades is what's the impact that's going to have on your overall organization. If we take something we already have and we upgrade it, maybe we're doing 5-10% better, we're going to see incremental change, right? And you can think of a good example is we've got a website today. We can invest time and effort and get a better website. How many more members are going to sign up because our website's better? Are we going to sell, you know, twice as many event registrations because our event's better? Probably not. Maybe a few more, right? It's probably easier for people to do it on their smartphone, so you'll get some more registrants. But implementing an entirely new tool might be a game changer for you, right? Instead of just driving traffic to your website, now we're going to do social media and retargeting to try and find new audiences. We were never doing that before. So instead of investing in incremental upgrades or small changes to existing technology you have, I recommend implementing new strategies and new processes, new tools out there, because that can really be a game changer. That can take you from, you know, 1 or 2 times what you're doing to 10 or 20 times what you're doing now by going out and finding a new technology or a new tool. That's going to be a huge game changer for you. So the investment might be a little bigger on the front end, but the impact it's going to have on your organization can be huge when you look at the outcome of investing in a new tool or a new technology, inventing a new process that's going to solve the problem you have.
Great point. Okay, so this is a really good segue into the second one, which is that change is hard, right? And so because change is hard, that's a very good reason why we very often opt for incremental solutions versus those that are more game changer types, right? Because the process for selling that internally, for getting that buy-in, is quite different, right? But if you're going to do that, if you're going to lobby for that change, you need some good reasons for doing that, right? So we have to focus on our outcomes. So the outcomes, a few of those are here, right? We want to improve our efficiency. We obviously want to drive revenue. We want that consistent trusted data. These are analytics outcomes, of course, right? And then we want to keep our strategy aligned. We want to drive that strategy from the organization and the strategic level down to our individual departments and individual people, which means that we're going to work down the funnel, right? So we start with, you know, something that's big, that's an annual goal, that's strategic in nature, that's long term, and we kind of work down the funnel in terms of scope and in terms of time frame, you know, till we get to things that are kind of maybe even personal in nature and things that we monitor like more daily, right? And so as we do that, we ensure that things are aligned with our strategic plan, and it really kind of requires, you know, more granular forms of performance measurement, you know, as we get down there to make sure that we're all doing the right things.
I think it's not only up and down, it's across, right? So working collaboratively with other departments can be really key here, not just with data and analytics, but with any project. If we're thinking about bringing on an analytics platform, it's not just going to benefit me and the membership team. It's going to benefit Bill and the marketing team, and Rebecca on the events team, and Katrina on the policy team. All of us are going to share in the win here, but it's really important along that journey to share data with each other, right? So this is a conversation Bill and I had earlier about making sure that, hey, can you share those registration numbers with me? Well, yeah, I can help share that data. Not only can I share that, how are we using this to plan for our upcoming conference? How are we using this data to plan for our budget next year? When we do budgets, do we all break into our individual data silos and teams and come up with our own recommendations and propose them in a silo? Or do we look across the organization and say, well, how does my tool benefit you and how does your tool benefit me? And this can be really hard if we're struggling with those data silos and we're not breaking those down. But once we start to work collaboratively across departments and across teams, we're going to start to realize that my investment doesn't just benefit my team, it benefits multiple teams. And we might want to start thinking about that when we get into analytics.
All right. What's this? What's this kitchen thing? What's this all about?
I also think we need to show examples. So I'm a huge nerd for HGTV, right? Everybody wants to redesign their kitchen. You pay the consultants, they come in and they do some sketches for you. But one of the things they always do is they always show you what that future state is going to look like, right? No one's going to drop, 50, 100 grand on a kitchen upgrade if they can't envision what it's going to look like. And you'll see these really good renderings and models of the future state of your kitchen. And you think that's really where I want to make, lunch every day. That's where I want to be cooking dinner tonight. And that motivation of showing people that end state is a great way to help get that budget and ROI. Now, in your association, it's a little bit different than showing them the picture of the kitchen, right? We might want to show them what analytics success looks like. And this could be pretty simple. Move those Excel spreadsheets into Power BI, get a free copy of Google Analytics Studio, start plugging your data in and start showing people the charts and graphs that they would have access to if this were a holistic project, right? Give them a taste of what that end result looks like, show them that vision. So when we start talking about investing in it, when we start getting down to these ROI examples, we really have some sort of future state vision we're trying to get to. It's not this nebulous, it's out there in the future and we'll get there. It's no, this is real. You can touch this and feel this. This is what it's going to look like when we redesign your kitchen.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Rick. Wow, 50 to 100K for a kitchen upgrade. That's a nice kitchen.
Got to watch some good kitchen shows.
Yeah. Okay. So, so change is hard, but you know what might be even a little bit harder? Proving ROI, right? This is a tough thing. This is a question that, that we get asked about a lot, right? I mean, and it's something that is necessary, but it's also quite subjective in some ways, right? There's a lot of assumptions that you have to make, and so it's a process that requires some creativity, maybe in some cases. So we're gonna walk you through that a little bit. I'm curious, just amongst those that are on the call, is proving ROI specifically for analytics something that you've tried to do? I see it is for Alan, but anyone else that's tried, and if there's something specific that's tripped you up, it'd be great to hear about that. Maybe we can address that. All right.
I think this makes a lot of sense. And this is something a consultant was talking about at a conference I attended a few years ago. We were talking about the ROI on an online community, right? And we all think online communities can benefit our organization, but it can be fairly challenging to tie that ROI directly back to a number that you can put in an Excel spreadsheet. And he had this argument that I think is pretty interesting. It's what's the ROI on your mom? Like, write it down, get out an Excel spreadsheet and start typing in the ROI on your mom, right? Were you more likely to get up and go to school in the morning? Were you more likely to go to college and graduate and get a job because you had a mom? Were you more likely to stay alive, right? Because you had a mom? I think it's hard to write those down in Excel, but everybody knows it's infinite, right? Of course there's ROI on a mom. You can't exist without your mom, right? That's really tough. It's a huge benefit. It's a huge leg up in the world, but you can't quantify it. You can't put it in Excel and write it down, but that doesn't mean there's not an ROI behind it. So I think this is a good example occasionally when you get into those number-driven arguments with people and they're like, just show me the numbers on paper on why I need to invest in this. And you're like, it's so many different outputs. There's not one number I'm going to write down for you. Now, Bill's going to write one number down for you, but I want you to keep in mind that it might be a specious argument to put everything down into an ROI calculator and end up with a number and a percent. That may not be the goal of your ROI project.
Yeah, agreed. So some great answers here. 85%, Alan says, which I love. Okay, so the point here is that, I mean, we're making a joke out of it, but the point here is that not everything can be calculated exactly, and in some cases, it's enough to have what we would call a directional insight, right? So we know that it's going to be better, and we know that the amount that it's going to bring us is greater than what it's going to cost, right? And so maybe we can't tell you the exact percentage greater, but we know it's going to be greater because it's, hey, look, it's not very expensive, and all we would really need, like, so a quick example, one of the things that we would do sometimes in an actual calculator is we look at lifetime value of members, and we say, hey, look, you only need to retain a couple of extra members each year, really, or acquire a couple of new members each year in order for this solution to pay for itself. Do you think you could do that? Right. And of course, the answer is yes. And so directionally, that's an ROI conversation that already starts to make sense. Now, you can build on that by trying to quantify very specific things, which I'm going to walk you through here. But you just know that it's very often a directional insight, and very often it's going to require you to make some assumptions, right? So one of the conversations we had along this was with the association who later did come on board as a customer, but they asked us to prove the ROI, and I actually used the term prove, but I used it loosely. They used the term prove; they meant it very explicitly, right? They wanted to actually see, they wanted a guarantee essentially of the outcomes that they would achieve with the analytics solution. And we tried to get as close as we could, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to make some assumptions in order to make this work. And, and hope, we try to make conservative assumptions, right? So that they turn out to overachieve, but reality is you're going to have to make some assumptions. So I'm going to introduce to you quickly a template that we use, and it's called a benefits analysis, or something like that, right? But it's specifically not called an ROI calculator, although some of what you're doing is calculations, right? So it's meant to give you a sense for a directional sense for the ROI in the key areas that you care about. So here's how it works, and this is going to be available to everyone after the webinar today. So don't worry about trying to squint and read the contents of each one of the cells. The important things are the columns, for right now. So we have a column called business area, and that's really the area that you're focused on, right? So it might be membership retention, it might be acquisition, it might be event attendance, right? So it's that particular area of your business. Maybe it's advocacy, right? Maybe it's communications, right? Your publications. It could be a lot of different things, but what is that thing that you want to improve? Simple enough. Next, we want to be deliberate about establishing a strategic goal around that area, right? So, and we wanted to put it in a narrative form. We have to, if we want to improve something, we have to know what is the current state, right? So we want to describe the current state and want to be specific using numbers, percentages, ratios, whatever it is that we know about our current state. The future state is where we have to make some assumptions, right? And so if we have a retention problem and we know, or we suspect that our retention problem is due to lack of relevance, we don't communicate the value very well, we don't provide the right products and services to members at the right time, things like that, then if we can improve on those, we can communicate better with more relevant, more content, more products, more services. We can improve engagement, right? If we can do all of those things, right, even just a little bit better, and these are incremental changes, but in the aggregate, they can be game changers, right? Then we can achieve more retention, right? And so we'll calculate those things. The revenue impact is it's based on the assumptions of the future state, but that's a pretty straightforward calculation, right? If we can get this many new members or retain this many or this many attendees, we already know, that an average attendee spends this much, or that an average member spends this much over their lifetime, or this much per year. So we can be pretty specific about the numbers that we calculate there based on those assumptions. And then across all the different things, one of the great benefits of an analytics tool is the time savings across every one of the departments, right? Because everyone spends time to create reports, right? To compile data, to wrangle that data into something usable. And and then they have to collaborate over that. They have to share it out. They have to attach it to an email and send it to you, or, or something like that, right? And then you have to consume it, right? So then there's that savings on the other side where pretty much everyone in the organization that consumes data has to, has to spend time to interpret, and if they have some, additional questions, they have to wait for you to answer and all those kinds of things. So lots of savings and optimization value there. So anything that we left off, Greg, before we go to a quick example?
No, I think that's a great description of it. I want to put this in action for me. Give me an example of how I could build one of these statements out myself.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to take a pretty simple example that I think is relevant to most of us, and this is member win back. Okay, so this is the left brain version of the ROI for member win back. So we're going to start with our strategic goal, right? So we're going to analyze our former members, and how we're going to do that. We're going to use engagement activities and our predictive models that come with our analytics solution, and we're going to determine the best prospects for successful campaigns, right? So we're not just going to blast the same generic win back message to every single person that ever left the organization. We're going to target them based on how they had engaged, and predictive models about how likely we felt that they were to renew. So specifically, we might have a very specific campaign for highly engaged individuals that we expected to renew and did not. Right. So we're going to have a really high conversion rate on that call to action. So our current state is, hey, look, win back campaigns send the same message to everyone, to all the lapsed members. And over the last 5 years, we've averaged R, right? That's just a variable, this amount of reinstatements, right? So we'll say that that's 100, right? For purposes of argument. So our future state is that we're going to have targeted relevant messaging to that group, and we're going to improve the effectiveness of those campaigns. We're going to have high conversion rates on this call to action, and we're sure that, right, and this is a bit of an assumption, but we're sure that we can improve those rates by 10 to 20%, right? So in this case, we're going to select 15 just to get something conservative and believable. So here's our quick calculation, right? Our 100 average reinstatements times or plus, you have that 15% improvement times $1,000. And so what's 1,000? 1,000 is how much we know that members spend annually, right? So if we get one back that had dropped, then that's an additional $1,000 annually, and that means that the revenue impact of just this one aspect of the ROI is $15,000, right? And so is it exactly $15,000.00? Probably not, but is this believable? Does this pass the sniff test? For an ROI, is this getting to something reasonably specific from something that's kind of can seem like it's intangible and hard to calculate? Yeah, I think so, right? So we go through a similar type of exercise with the other business areas that that are kind of problem areas, or they're things that you want to move the needle on. In almost every case, you can come up with a real number that's directionally accurate, and that gives you a sense for potential ROI. You can overlay that with time savings across the entire organization. And I hesitate to use the word guarantee, but I haven't yet seen a case where that doesn't exceed the investment that you're being asked to make several fold. So happy to share this template with you. This is for analytics, but you could use it for other things as well. Okay, so that's the left brain version. Greg, so what about the right brain, the creative types? What do you suggest for them?
So that ROI calculation did not work for me personally. I have to say, I was following the numbers, and then there were more numbers, and then I was confused by the more numbers. And I saw at the bottom we're making more money, but like my brain didn't really follow that argument the same way your brain did, which is why the Bill and Greg show works so well, because Bill's brain is the analytical science numbers brain. My brain is the emotional feeling brain, right? So how do we tell that same story, but we want to tell that to the side of our brain that's going to be emotional, that's going to really be communicated, and that's story oriented, right? So if we take that same example, membership is key for us, right? And let's put our hats on. I'm just going to make an association up out of the blue. I'm going to say we are an art materials institute that has to do with safety. I don't even know if that sort of thing exists. But our members are companies that produce art materials that K through 12 students use. And if we have members that are certified and use our technology, we're going to ensure that more K through 12 students get safe products to use. And, we can't afford to lose members every year. While it definitely hurts our bottom line, it also impacts our mission, right? We're not able to deliver the safety standards to ensure that the chemicals that are being used are quality, that our members are delivering products that are safe for kids to use, right? So like, it's not that we just want members because it delivers revenue, it's because it delivers our mission. And we can't afford to lose these members because we can't have kids using unsafe art supplies. So we're telling the same story about membership and retention, but we're putting it in a language that has that emotional appeal that's really related to our goals and our strategic outcomes as an organization. And Barbara, what a crazy world that I just described your association. I can't imagine that I just lucked upon that today. But I feel like if we took that message to your board and said, look, this is why our organization exists, this is what our mission's all about. Losing members is not just a bad, return for us. It impacts our mission. Here is it in the numbers, but here's it in the emotions. That 1-2 punch of communicating with data, but tying it to an emotional story that people can feel, that to me is where analytics is a new type of tool. It's not that I'm saying I feel this is a problem and I think we can solve it. I'm saying, look at the numbers. This is a problem. And I know we can do better. Here's how we can do better. But the important part is the story about how the metrics behind the scenes allow me to articulate that. So I'm not just saying, I think that we can do better. I'm saying we can. Here's it in the numbers.
Yeah, great point, Greg. And I always love this this graphic. We use it in a lot of different contexts. But if you think back to the kitchen, right? I think this house one works there too, right? Because you don't get me to spend 50 or 100K by talking about or showing me like a list of features that my kitchen's going to have, right? I need to be able to visualize it, right? So a lot of your stakeholders, a lot of your audience, when you're trying to pitch something like this, they're not going to be able to visualize the house unless you give them some examples of what the house is going to look like. Okay, great. So the last part of this is about let's say, what if you can't wait, right? So how do we nudge our way into a budget that's already set or mostly set, right? So how do we get that very last sliver of pie, or how do we find a sliver where it appears that that none exists, right? So how do we make that happen, right? So there's a lot of different ways to do it. We'll talk about a few of them, but I think we talked a lot about the goals, right? The obstacles that we face, some of the solutions to them. We know that analytics is broadly speaking one of the good ways to address them, but it also it takes a while, right? And so Greg, when's the best time to plant a tree? It's been a while since we asked this question.
That's an easy one. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago.
Right. What's the second best time?
Today.
All right. So point is, this is going to take time. And every day that you delay is obviously one day, or maybe more than one day, actually, further away from achieving some of those outcomes, from seeing that house, right? So it's an important thing. The best time is time is now, right? Okay. So what else do we do, Greg? The pie's allocated, or it's almost all gone. What can we do to get our piece kind of the last minute here?
Well, let me rapid fire through some of these so we can get to Rebecca as quick as possible. Ask for budget. No one just shows up and says, we've got all this money. Do you want some? Ask for budget, but over ask for budget. If you're hoping to get $50,000 in budget, ask for $100,000 in budget. And when they come back and say, oh, we could only get you $50,000, you're like, shucks, what a shame we didn't get everything we asked for, right? Know the rules. Sometimes budgeting and process can be really wonky. And sometimes it's all about like knowing when the deadline is, or knowing what information they need to approve your project, or what criteria are they using to judge budget allocation this year. Is there a certain metric they're looking for? And if you can make the right argument that fits into the way they'll allocate budget, you can be good. So know the little ins and outs in the policy of budget, and you're not going to get it right on the first time. So make sure you're constantly asking for things. You're going through this process on a regular basis, so you understand the rules, the ins and outs, and how it works. If any projects fall through or get postponed, does that mean it's not going to happen this year? Or does that mean we can do this next year? Right? Is this already allocated for budget down the road? What are the next project you can get, instead of just it's not happening at all? What about pooling your money together? Just because I don't have budget for it doesn't mean that 3 or 4 of us might not have budget for it. If I didn't use everything I have in my budget this year, I might have enough left over that we can all go in together and get something we want, right? I think that could be an interesting one. Knowing your audience and appealing to their specific pain points. This can easily go back to the strategic plan, right? You as a board told us you wanted to achieve these objectives, and how are we doing on that? What things have we done proactively to achieve those objectives so far? And if we haven't, here's a really good way to speak their language and appeal to the things that they personally want to have happen, and say, look, if we allocate budget for my project, right, we might actually get what we want. And you'd be surprised. There's always a little discretionary spending on the side. There's always money that pops up out of nowhere when something aligns with something that those decision makers want. Sometimes that budget that wasn't there is now always there. Now, I started this off by saying over ask and ask for big, but that doesn't mean you have to start big. You can always start small, right? We wanted to spend a ton on analytics this year and we couldn't get there. We're just going to start small and we're going to spend the budget we have. That way, next year, we're even more ready for it. Maybe we'll get started with data governance, or we'll get started with data cleanup. We'll start building our integrations, right? And pulling the data in the warehouse, but we're not necessarily going to leverage that data yet. So there's a lot of ideas that you can use. Don't just give up at the end of the day and say, oh, we didn't get the budget we wanted, right? Keep trying different tactics, keep trying different strategies to try and go ahead and get that budget, because a lot of times, just because you got a no on the first time doesn't mean you're going to get a no on the second time.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and bring Rebecca in a second. Just maybe she'll probably say these are, guys, you guys are crazy. These will never work. But one question I had as Greg was talking through these is, how many people work for an association that found money to buy a virtual events platform in 2020 where they hadn't budgeted for that? I bet there's more than a handful of those. Right. So that's kind of proof, right? These things can happen if the motivation is high enough. Okay, so with that, we are going to invite our special guest star, Rebecca Achurch, into the conversation. And she's going to talk to us about tool selection and all sorts of things that are interesting. So welcome, Rebecca. I'm going to turn off the share and so we can
Thank you.
see all of our faces like really big.
Well, good, because every time my husband looks at that picture, as I told you, he says, "Who's that?"
All right. Okay. So Rebecca, tell us. Let's start simple. Tell us about Achurch Consulting.
Certainly. So first of all, thank you for allowing me to be part of the Bill and Greg show. I've enjoyed it. I was like, could we be GBR? Could I come up with some great initials or do something fun like that? It did not work. So we are a mid-sized consulting practice that, we call ourselves your transition team, and an organization that really works to help leaders and organizations make decisions in the light. And what that means is that we are a group of former association CAOs, IT directors, program managers, PMs, and BAs. And what we really do is we help organizations as they're going through some of the transformation and transition that you're talking about. We don't just, drop a big fat report on a desk. What is it? 42% said you were lacking resources. Those unachievable roadmaps that you get from these pie in the sky consulting agencies. Well, we put our money where our mouth is, and we actually stick through the entire transformation with you. So that's what we do. We've been referred to as an insurance policy, a whole bunch of other things, but I call it a little sick and twisted, because anybody who wants to do implementations, well, it's a little crazy. So that's what we do. It's been great. So that's what. So a lot of these conversations are very familiar.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, who couldn't use some help like that? So I encourage y'all to reach out to Rebecca. But okay, so give us a sense for. And I know it depends and all that, but give us a sense for what type of solutions and tools that that your clients are looking for most often, or that you find yourself recommending.
So what's interesting is I was sitting here thinking about what is really causing people to go out and look for technology. And it really boils down to a couple of things. One is it's not meeting member needs. There's a definite misalignment. I think your example about, hey, we needed a virtual platform last year, and oh, wow, they found the budget for that, right? So much of it is about meeting member expectations. But more and more, I would say that we as as association leaders have a fiduciary responsibility to upgrade technology. I mean, we should be leveraging technology. So, we're seeing it in a whole bunch of different areas. Of course, there's AMSs, the content management system. You've gotten to, of course, there's analytics too. Of course, we are definitely seeing organizations talking to us about how do we create, and we used to call it, a 360, view of our member. And they were doing it in all these different ways from a transactional level, but there's such an interest in looking below skin deep, below the transactional layer, what's happening. So they're looking for signs and data and platforms that can work with them to give them different insights than potentially just the transactional. So yes, we've got LMSs. I do see learning as a big platform right now. I think that continuing education is really changing as well. But that's the same old AMSs, CMSs, etc. But I think that the underlying thing is not meeting member needs and understanding that we need to look at data differently than we have, and things like that.
Awesome, thanks. What do you think? What's kind of the main challenges that your clients run into? Like what do they get wrong?
When? At what stage? So at the beginning stage in the selection, I think it's getting caught up in the bells and whistles instead of thinking about it foundationally. Really looking at order of operation, and frankly, at the beginning, thinking they can bite off more than they can chew. So that's what I'm going to say happens in the beginning stages of just the general selection, is not really being able to, from a strategic level, understand the order of operation in which you should go about your transformation, when you should be pulling systems out and when you should be replacing it. Frankly, not prioritizing properly. Potentially choosing technology or making a decision to go forward with a platform because it's the loudest voice in the room, not because it's aligned strategically. And that is, we'll talk people off that ledge a lot. That doesn't make any sense to do now. Here are some other things you need to do first. When you get into the implementation, it's the focusing on what you do, not the outcome. So that's what we typically find in that phase is well, here's our process today versus here's the outcome that we need to have. And so that's the kind of the implementation misfiring that we have. We also see that people are not thinking about building new muscle memory. So during an implementation itself is the perfect time for organizations to begin to build new structures and processes within the organization to help you become successful. So those are really important things that they're not thinking about. They're just thinking about getting to launch. And then when you get into the post-launch, what I typically see is that they think they're done. Okay. And you're never done. So because they haven't gone through the rigor of putting in new processes and understanding, technology is always going to be changing and evolving at this point in time. And so what we have to remember is you've got to have budget in there every year for continuous improvement. And people don't think about that. You have to prepare that it's going to take you a year to two for adoption. I'd go back one thing and people are not thinking about actually their data very strategically and understanding the cleanliness of the data and where it needs to be. So I'll get to that topic kind of in a minute if you give me time, but it's kind of a sidebar, but that's another area that I get really concerned about is data cleanliness.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna, I think we'll have time to come back to you.
We only got 5 minutes, but those are the three things. Yeah, go ahead.
You kind of hit all of our, I don't know, we had a how-to webinar series. It's like each one of those, I think we spent a whole hour talking about each one of those issues here. So appreciate the reinforcement there. I want to ask your opinion on ROI.
Sure.
And so this is like a very open-ended question. So like that process that we went through, I mean, I don't know. What do you think of that? Is that legit?
I
or
love
is
the
that-
process.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the process. It's funny because, I very rarely hear someone say, so what's the ROI going to be on that AMS?
Right.
No one says that. Very, very rarely. They're saying it's not meeting our member needs, which is a member satisfaction survey, right? Like, what is that? Like, what does that really mean? It's out of date. I can't upgrade. So, I mean, those are the reasons why we're finding it. They're replacing the technology, like I said, specifically the AMS. So in the ROI question, I love the idea of those tangibles. And I love the idea that actually, I think when it comes to analytics, I think it is a little bit softer. I think you can prove out some very specific things, but I think you have to temper that with, you're not going to get that out of the gate tomorrow that gets to the data cleanliness. Because what I see happen so frequently, especially in what I'm going to call the real transformational stuff, when someone's coming in and replacing systems that are, 10 plus years old, and you're doing an entire ecosystem, maybe over a 3 to 5 year period, right? That takes time. And through that, you're uncovering the fact that you've had bad practices about data, and all those exceptions that Sally made because she thought she was doing great customer service has jacked up your data so bad that there's no way that you can see the consistency.
Yeah.
So what an analytics process, a project does from an ROI standpoint is it opens up conversations about what's really valuable for the organization. And to me, I mean, I don't want to say, yeah, that's priceless, but it serves as a platform to be able to open up conversations that you haven't had and prove out things. I remember the first analytics project I ever did, and this was back in probably 2010. We hired a very large data analytics company because we wanted to bring in a whole bunch of third-party data. This was years ago, 2010, prior to Association Analytics, right? So we looked at all our data, and there was a long-standing thought by the board that the greatest retention we were going to have is everybody who went to our annual meeting. And so we should discount that rate because they were going to be lifers. They thought there was great stickiness there. We were able to prove through the data that there was zero correlation. And so for the first time ever, we were able to go in and say things like, we shouldn't discount that rate to the annual meeting because there is no ROI there. So I think there are interesting little nuggets that you can find that maybe you weren't anticipating, but you have to look at it as a whole. You have to look at, I think when it comes to analytics, you've got to look at it much more holistically as a discovery, as a journey, as being data curious and understanding what that looks like, and then being able to draw questions and ROI out of it from there.
Awesome. Yeah, totally agree. So in that regard, analytics is like your mom, right?
It is like
there's a
your
lot
mom.
of there's
That's a
hidden
great
value
one.
there. There's hidden value there. You can't necessarily quantify all of it, but yeah, go out, got to make that decision, bring it up, get the budget. It's not really a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and we all know that the best time to plant that tree is 20 years ago or today. So let's make it today. Okay, great place to end. Greg, I'm going to give you the last word.
Wow, I wasn't ready for that. The last
Here's
word.
the Bill and Greg show.
No, that's okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. The fact that you joined means that you are attempting to make an ROI or a data-driven argument about analytics in your association. And as we talked about it, that's step one of the journey. Analytics is not a light switch you flip on and you have instant success. It's a process you go through, and there's many steps and phases of that process. And attending webinars like this and looking at your data and building data governance committees and working through all that wonky policy stuff that you need to do, that's all part of the process. So you all have already won by getting started with that, right? When's the best time to plant your tree? You're already planting your trees. That's the exciting part of this. So kudos to all you for joining. Bill and I always appreciate your attendance here. We love it when you come and chat with us and share your ideas and experience. And that's what drives our webinar series. So I want to thank everybody for attending today.
All right, I said it's the last word, but we do have one coming up next week. This one's going to be only the Bill show. It's going to be with our friends at Halmeyer as a partner. We're going to talk about keeping about your value proposition, how to make one that's compelling, and how to update that continuously over time. So that should be a good one. I want to really thank Rebecca for joining us today. It was a really great guest spot, and we hope to have you back again in a future webinar. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.
Take care. Thank you.